is it in sales that we are so reluctant to admit when we've made a mistake? I know it can be very vulnerable when you're selling and when there's so much pressure to make the number, to make the sale, to close the deal, to reach the quota. But if you can't acknowledge, at least to yourself, that you've made a mistake, then you can't learn from it. You won't grow from it, and you might not recover from it either. I see sellers when I'm in field coaching, I see them making the same mistake over and over and over again until the mistake itself becomes a habit. It becomes something that the seller is almost unwilling to let go of because they've denied that there could be a better way of doing something. Don't let that happen to you. At the end of every sales call, at the end of every sales process with every customer or prospect, take time to dissect what you've done, to know what you should be attributing your successes to, but also knowing what could be different that would make you more successful. Do some A/B split testing, even if things are going pretty well. Try something else. Compare. Is what I used to do more effective than this other way of doing things? You won't know unless you try. And to recover from your mistakes and to make fewer of them in the long run, your best bet is to do a little bit of experimenting, knowing that you might fail when you experiment, and being okay with that, because failing forward, is the very best way to learn and grow over the long term.
I could go on and on for hours about all the mistakes I've made in my gardening over the past few years. But I find it's not all that productive to dwell on my mistakes. I don't waste time blaming or shaming or beating myself up when I make mistakes. Instead, I look for the learning opportunity within them. What could I have done differently? What will I try next time? What resources could I have consulted? Maybe they'd help me prevent future mistakes too. Let me show you just a few of the mistakes that I've made. Carrots. I'm in year number 3. Year 1 of growing carrots, I didn't prune them. I didn't thin them out when they started to emerge from the straw bales. And that meant that all of my carrots were sort of deformed. They didn't have enough room to grow under the straw. They were bumping into each other. And so I had lots of squat, misshapen carrots. They still tasted great, but they weren't nearly as high yield as they could have been. Year 2, in the straw bales, I spread the carrots out appropriately. And they were pretty good. They did well. But you have to plant carrots quite early in the season, and straw bales take time to break down. So although they were the right shape, they weren't as long as I thought they could be. So this year I am attempting to grow carrots in containers of dirt. I'm still growing some in the straw bales because I want to make a comparison. I've thinned them out appropriately, and hopefully I'll have all the right conditions. Oh, something else I did this year. I didn't plant all the carrots at the very same time. I gave myself an opportunity to have multiple harvests of carrots. That way I think I can enjoy them a little bit more and not have to try to freeze and eat and give away as many carrots all at once. I also have a situation this year that I haven't figured out what I'll do differently next year. Maybe some of you will have some advice for me. These poor straggly little plants over here on the left-hand side, those are sesame plants. I wanted to grow and harvest sesame seeds to add to my herbs and spices. I've got a pretty good collection of things that I've grown. The poppy seeds are doing great, the poppy plants, but the sesame seeds never quite got off the ground. The sesame plants, I didn't even transplant them because this is the best they ever looked. It was downhill from here. I think it might be that I kept them too wet. but I'm not sure. So I've got some research to do. I'll do that in the off season, and hopefully next year I'll have better success growing sesame plants. I've experimented a lot with tomato plants here on the right-hand side. What I'm doing differently this year is with the big ones that grow fast, I'm staking them early, but not tightly because I want them to have room to grow quickly. I've used bigger, better tomato cages so they've got more support. I've put milk cartons in so that I can give deep root watering. And I think because I've learned those lessons along the way, I think this year's tomato crop might be the biggest and best yet. Although I should tell you that I have planted considerably fewer tomato plants because last year's harvest was absolutely overwhelming. I am learning some lessons too about my herb garden here in the middle. I heard with straw bales that you can plant things closer together than you would in dirt. And so what you see here are 3 rows. On the left is basil, in the middle is oregano, and on the right-hand side is parsley. The parsley and the basil, they did great. I was harvesting those about every other day and dehydrating and drying them so that I had dried herbs to last all year round. In fact, I gave some away last year too. But the oregano never quite got to that same level of productivity. And I think it's because oregano wants more room. Oregano doesn't want to be in the middle in a tight row. As you can see, it actually chose on its own to only sprout up about every other plant, where the other ones are denser. So this year I've given oregano more room to grow. I learned the hard way that you can, in fact, grow way too many hot peppers, and it means something. When it says it's very, very hot, it really is very, very hot, hotter than I wanted for my salsas and pickles. So this year I'm growing a different type of pepper to put into those products. Here's one of my best lessons. I learned that you can make jam, or jelly rather, out of red bud trees. You harvest the red buds off. This is in early spring. You soak them down so that it's just the tea of the red buds, and you can turn that into a jelly. So I made a lot of red bud jelly because I have lots of red buds on my property. But my red bud jelly, only about half of it got to the place where it was truly like a jelly. The rest was too thin. It was more like a syrup. Now you can, if that ever happens to you, you can actually process it all over again and add some more pectin, but I didn't want to do all that work. So it occurred to me, since this stuff was pretty tasty, it occurred to me that it might make a very good simple syrup. And I've been making a special cocktail. It's my own invention, and it uses red bud syrup that should have been jelly. Well, I'd like you to do the same sort of thing. When you make mistakes, what are the lessons you can learn? What are the ways you can recover from your mistakes and do entirely different things than you ever envisioned doing in the first place? And how can you continually improve, time after time again, to make things better each and every time?